What if I told you that the reason your diet is stalling isn't actually the calories in your Friday night beer,
Right.
but rather it's this hidden multi-hour biological pause button that it presses inside your liver?
Yeah, it's a completely different way of looking at it.
Exactly. So today, we are doing a deep dive into something called the metabolic priority problem. We're unpacking a really interesting stack of sources today.
We are. We've got an incredibly detailed article from the Willpower Lie series, along with some clinical metabolic research.
Right, and the mission here is to uncover what actually happens under the hood when you drink while you're trying to lose weight.
And we really want to keep this direct, calm and entirely mechanism first.
No diet guru hype here.
No, and absolutely no moralizing about your lifestyle choices. We're just looking at the biological data.
Because for you listening, I mean, you might be tracking your food perfectly, you're hitting the gym, doing everything right, and just feeling entirely frustrated by incredibly slow results.
Which is so common. And honestly, looking at the biology is the most empowering way to approach human physiology.
Yeah, it takes the blame out of it.
Exactly. When we understand the underlying mechanism, we remove all the mystery and that frustration. We can stop guessing why the scale isn't moving and start looking at the raw mechanics of how our organs actually process what we consume.
So let's start with the baseline, right? The framework that most of us are taught about alcohol and dieting.
The standard model.
Yeah, which usually just comes down to pure caloric math. Like if we look at the standard macronutrients, carbohydrates and proteins contain about 4 kilocalories per gram.
Right.
And then fats are much denser. They sit at 9 kilocalories per gram. And alcohol, it just sits right there in the middle at 7 kilocalories per gram.
Yeah, that's the standard textbook nutritional accounting. I mean, it's how every major fitness and nutrition app categorizes human energy intake.
Right, and the conventional wisdom that comes from that accounting just says, just track it.
Exactly, if it fits your macros.
Right, yeah. The prevailing advice is you just add those 7 calories per gram to your daily tracking app, maintain your overall caloric deficit for the day, and, well, the alcohol just becomes metabolically neutral.
Which treats the human body exactly like a simple spreadsheet.
Right, like as long as the math balances at the end of the day, you lose fat. But okay, let's unpack this. Does our liver actually read spreadsheets?
It definitely does not. And this is really where the standard model of dieting just completely falls apart.
Because mathematically, it's not wrong.
Mathematically, yes, that accounting is correct for basic energy balance. I mean, a calorie is indeed a unit of energy, but relying purely on that spreadsheet model, it misses a massive non-caloric mechanism.
Okay, what does the spreadsheet miss?
Well, it assumes that all calories are processed simultaneously, without any consequence to the surrounding systems. It essentially assumes your body treats 100 calories of broccoli exactly the same as 100 calories of vodka.
Just as long as the total number at the bottom of the page is the same.
Exactly. But the liver does not process macronutrients based on arbitrary biochemistry. It processes them based on survival pressure.
Okay, survival pressure. I really want to unpack that. What does survival pressure have to do with, like, having a glass of Pinot Noir with dinner?
Well, the liver processes macronutrients in a strict physiological priority order. When you consume different types of fuel, they form a sort of line in your digestive and metabolic system.
Like a queue.
Right, like a queue. But alcohol bypasses that entire line. It goes straight to the absolute front. It cuts ahead of the protein you ate, the carbohydrates, and crucially, the fat you're currently trying to burn.
Wait, why does it get VIP access?
Because the primary metabolite of alcohol, which is a compound called acetaldehyde, is acutely toxic to the human body.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's a literal poison that damages cells and DNA. And on top of that, the human body has zero storage capacity for alcohol.
Unlike other macros.
Exactly. We can easily store dietary fat in our adipose tissue, right? We can store carbohydrates as glycogen in our muscles and liver, but we cannot store ethanol.
Got it. So it has to be dealt with right now.
Right. So clearing this toxin takes immediate precedence over every single other metabolic function.
So it's essentially a biological triage situation.
That's a great way to put it.
Like, if we use a hospital emergency room as an analogy, you might be sitting in the waiting room wanting someone to look at your sprained ankle, which in this case represents the dietary fat you want your body to burn.
Right.
But if a patient bursts through the double doors with a life-threatening trauma, the alcohol, the triage nurse, immediately routes every available doctor to the trauma patient.
And your sprained ankle is put entirely on pause.
Exactly.
That is the exact dynamic. When you drink, your liver shifts entirely into ethanol processing mode. It drops everything else.
Wow.
And to understand why this stalls fat loss, we have to look at the specific chemical reaction happening during that triage.
Okay, get a little nerdy with it. What's the chemistry?
So as the liver oxidizes ethanol into acetaldehyde and then eventually into acetate, it produces a massive amount of a molecule called NADH. Right, which stands for nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide.
Say that 3 times fast.
I'd rather not. But essentially, the liver is producing all this NADH to deal with the alcohol.
Wait, so does that excess NADH just, like, harmlessly float away? Or does it cause some kind of traffic jam in the system?
Oh, it causes a profound traffic jam. Think of your liver as a manufacturing plant. Normally, it burns fat, and a little bit of natural exhaust, which is the NADH, goes up the chimney.
Okay, normal operations.
Right. But when you drink, processing that alcohol creates so much thick, heavy exhaust that the factory floor completely fills with smoke. The delicate ratio of molecules in your liver cells is severely altered.
And what happens to the factory machinery when the floor is completely filled with smoke?
The machinery shuts down.
Entirely.
Entirely. Specifically, a process called beta oxidation.
Beta oxidation.
Yeah, which is the mitochondrial process of breaking down fatty acids for energy. In plain English, it is your body's fat-burning engine.
Okay, so the smoke shuts off the fat-burning engine.
Exactly. The flood of NADH acts as a hard biological stop sign. It actively inhibits beta oxidation. The machinery literally cannot operate in those conditions until the smoke clears.
That makes so much sense.
But it actually goes one step further. The excess NADH doesn't just stop fat burning, it actively promotes a process called lipogenesis.
Lipogenesis, so breaking down the Latin there, like genesis, that literally means the creation of new fat.
Correct. You aren't just pausing the fat-burning process, you are biochemically shifting the entire metabolic environment to favor fat storage.
That reframes things completely. You think you're just enjoying a drink and adding a few harmless numbers to your calorie app, but you're actually flipping a master override switch in your liver.
A massive override switch, yeah.
I know the sources pointed to some clinical data on this. How dramatic is this shift in reality?
The numbers are incredibly stark. The benchmark research on this is a 1999 study by Seiler, Neitz, and Hellerstein.
Right.
They wanted to see exactly what happens to dietary fat when alcohol is introduced. And to do this, they used stable isotope tracer methodology.
Meaning they could literally attach a microscopic tag to specific fat molecules and watch exactly where they went inside a living human body.
Exactly. It is a brilliant way to track human metabolism in real time.
That is wild.
Yeah, so they gave their participants a moderate intake of alcohol, specifically 1.75 grams per kilogram of body weight. For the average person, that works out to roughly 3 or 4 drinks.
Okay. Standard Friday night for a lot of people.
Right. And they monitored the body's fat oxidation before and after those drinks were consumed. The tracer data showed that fat oxidation dropped by approximately 79%.
It's a 79% reduction. That is basically turning the dial all the way down to 0.
It is a near total suspension of the body's ability to burn fat.
Wow. And how long does that last?
It lasts for the entire duration that the liver is forced to process the alcohol. Depending on the individual's unique biology and, the exact amount they drank, that triage process typically takes anywhere from 4 to 8 hours.
So for up to a third of your entire day, your fat-burning engine is completely turned off.
Yes. And consider what that means for the food you're eating simultaneously.
Oh, right. Because people usually eat when they drink.
Exactly. During that 4 to 8 hour window, any dietary fat you consume, whether it's the cheese on a late-night slice of pizza or even the incredibly healthy fats in like an olive oil dressing or an avocado, it's far more readily routed straight to storage.
Because the liver's busy.
Right. The body cannot burn it for fuel because the liver is entirely occupied dealing with the acetaldehyde toxin, so it just packs the dietary fat away into your adipose tissue.
Okay, so the liver's fat-burning factory is shut down for 4 to 8 hours. That handles the background biology. But what is happening in the foreground? Because I know when I have a few drinks, my brain isn't exactly craving a measured portion of steamed broccoli.
Yeah, nobody's brain is. And that is where we see the cascading behavioral cost. The liver is really just ground zero.
Right.
Beyond the liver, alcohol creates a whole host of caloric impacts that your fitness tracker is completely oblivious to.
Like what?
Well, let's look at appetite stimulation. Controlled clinical studies show a 20 to 30% increase in food intake due to alcohol consumption.
Wait, is that just a lack of willpower, or is there an actual biological driver there too?
Oh, it is heavily biological. Alcohol acutely affects your appetite-regulating hormones, like ghrelin and leptin.
Okay.
It artificially spikes your hunger signals.
Mm.
And when you combine those biological cravings with the social context of drinking, which naturally lowers your cognitive inhibitory control in the prefrontal cortex, the result is highly predictable.
It's a double whammy.
Exactly.
You've paused the fat-burning engine in the background with the NADH smoke on the factory floor, and then in the foreground, you're actively throwing more fuel onto the pile because your inhibitions are down and your appetite hormones are literally screaming at you to eat.
And the quality of that fuel degrades rapidly.
Yeah, precision dietary choices rarely happen at midnight after 3 drinks.
They really don't. You are reaching for highly palatable, calorie-dense foods, but the cascade doesn't actually end when you go to sleep. We have to factor in the hangover effects the next day, which further skew the math.
Let's talk about the next day, because even if it's not a severe hangover, there's always that underlying sluggishness. How does that impact the overall metabolic picture?
It severely impacts a metric called NEAT.
Neat.
Yeah, non-exercise activity thermogenesis.
Okay, and what does that cover?
NEAT accounts for all the calories you burn doing things other than sleeping, eating, or dedicated exercise. It's your posture, your pacing, your fidgeting, taking the stairs instead of the elevator.
The background burn.
Right. When you are operating on poor sleep and dealing with the mild toxicity of a hangover, your NEAT plummets. Your body subconsciously conserves energy. You sit more. You move less.
I see where this is going.
Yeah.
The caloric deficit you meticulously planned for the day after drinking the one you built your whole spreadsheet around it rarely materializes because your baseline burn rate has just dropped.
Exactly. And you also mentioned training quality earlier. Even a mild hangover reduces your athletic output.
For sure.
Your motivation drops, your cardiovascular capacity is slightly impaired, and your time to exhaustion decreases. You might still go to the gym, but the intensity and the overall caloric expenditure of that session will be compromised.
So let's put all of this math together.
Let's do it.
If we combine the 79% biological pause button in the liver, the 20 to 30% spike in appetite hormones, the poor late-night food choices, the drop in NEAT, and the degraded training the next day, what is the actual real-world impact on someone's progress?
The sources provide a highly useful approximation to help visualize this. Let's take a standard scenario.
Okay.
Imagine someone who consumes 2 to 3 drinks, roughly 3 to 4 times a week.
Pretty common.
Very common. And ostensibly, they are following a fat loss protocol and tracking their macros. When you combine the direct calories of the alcohol with the fat oxidation suspension, the appetite stimulation, and the behavioral cascade we just talked about, their actual fat loss velocity is likely reduced by 30 to 50%.
Wow, that is massive. So if their spreadsheet math tells them they should be losing a pound a week, in reality, they might only be losing half a pound.
Yeah.
Or even less, depending on how aggressively their appetite spiked.
Yes. Compared to running that exact same nutritional protocol without the alcohol, their progress is basically cut in half.
I have to pause here, because this sounds incredibly restrictive. Is this the part where we tell everyone listening that if they want to improve their body composition, they can never, ever have a glass of wine again?
Not at all. And this is a really vital distinction to make when interpreting metabolic research.
Okay, good.
This data does not dictate a moral position on drinking. We are not saying alcohol is inherently evil or that you must live a monastic life to be healthy. What we are doing is providing a complete metabolic accounting.
Just getting the math right.
We are simply filling in the missing variables in your equation.
So it's about having accurate data so you don't drive yourself crazy wondering why the scale is stuck.
Precisely. If your fat loss is significantly slower than your caloric deficit suggests it should be, alcohol is the most likely culprit.
Right.
Very often when people hit a plateau, they assume something is medically wrong. They spend money and experience intense anxiety investigating their thyroid function, wondering if they have PCOS or worrying about insulin resistance or some hidden metabolic pathology.
Oh, absolutely. We always want to look for the exotic medical reason. I mean, it feels better to blame a broken system.
It does. But before you go down that medical rabbit hole, you must look at the simplest, most modifiable variable first.
Which is?
You have to look at your diet composition, with alcohol viewed as a very specific, highly impactful line item. The vast majority of the time, the metabolism isn't broken, it's just dealing with the priority problem.
The cue.
It's
The triage.
Exactly.
Okay, let's move into some practical application. Say someone's listening to this, and they completely understand the NADH mechanism, the biological pause button, and the behavioral cascade, but they decide, you know what? I enjoy a drink. Having a social cocktail is a non-negotiable part of my lifestyle.
Which is completely fair.
Right.
Yeah.
So if they want to keep alcohol in their life but minimize this metabolic damage, what is the strategy?
The strategy comes directly from understanding how the mechanism actually functions. The key takeaway from the research is that lower frequency is far more metabolically efficient than lower volume per session.
Wait, hold on. I want to make sure I'm following the logic here. Are you saying fewer nights out with more drinks is actually better than having just one polite glass of wine every single night with dinner?
Yes.
Logically, wouldn't a lower volume just sipping one drink a night be much better for my body than stacking them all on the weekend?
Logically, it feels like moderation should win, but metabolically for fat loss, no.
Why not?
Because the fat oxidation suspension, the pressing of that biological pause button, it occurs per drinking event. Yeah, it gets triggered every single time the liver has to shift into triage mode to deal with the toxin. If you have one glass of wine every night with dinner, you are hitting that 4 to 8 hour pause button on your fat burning 7 days a week.
You're just constantly restarting the pause.
Exactly. You are constantly, repeatedly interrupting the biological process of beta oxidation.
That makes perfect sense. By drinking daily, even a really small amount, I'm essentially flooding the factory floor with smoke every single evening.
Yes.
But if I only drink on Saturday night, even if I have 3 drinks, and the factory shuts down for a longer period that specific night, I'm still only hitting the pause button once that week.
You got it.
I'm giving my liver 6 completely uninterrupted days of beta oxidation.
That is the exact physiological reality. The liver has to shift into ethanol processing mode, regardless of whether it is dealing with 1 drink or 3. Therefore, keeping the total number of drinking events lower gives your body vastly more time in a fat-burning state.
That is fascinating.
Now, to be absolutely clear, this is not a biological license to engage in extreme binge drinking on the weekends.
Of course not.
Right, because binge drinking brings a whole other set of toxicities, health risks, and severe behavioral cascades. But from a strict metabolic efficiency standpoint regarding fat loss, fewer events overall is your best margin of defense.
That is a phenomenal reframing of how we view moderation. Are there any other ways to defend those margins on the days you do choose to drink?
Yeah, you can actively mitigate the damage by keeping your overall food intake modestly lower on the days you plan to drink.
Just to clear the pipeline.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you know the liver is going to be occupied and the factory floor will be shut down, do not send a massive shipment of dietary fat down the pipeline that day. Limit the fats that would otherwise just get routed directly to storage.
And what about the next day?
Secondly, maintain your training consistency the next day, regardless of how sluggish you feel.
Basically, force your NEAT back up. Force yourself to keep the engine running and clear the smoke out of the factory, even if you really don't feel like it.
Exactly. Do not let the biological pause button turn into a multi-day behavioral pause button.
Okay, to summarize this for everyone listening, alcohol is not just a simple math problem on your calorie tracker.
No, it's an active biological override.
Right. It forces your liver to drop absolutely everything, including the breakdown of body fat, to prioritize clearing a toxin from your system.
Exactly.
And when you combine that physiological pause button with the hormonal appetite spikes and the drop in your daily movement, it can easily cut your hard-earned fat loss results in half.
And really, the most valuable takeaway here is how this knowledge shifts our perspective on our own bodies.
How so?
Well, think about how many times people blame their genetics, their age, or their supposedly broken metabolism for hitting a wall.
Yeah, all the time.
When in reality, their metabolism is working flawlessly. Their liver is just quietly, efficiently, and brilliantly doing exactly what it evolved millions of years ago to do.
Which is protect them from a toxin. Your body isn't broken. It's just prioritizing your immediate survival over your desire for abs. It's literally just doing its job.
It fundamentally changes the relationship you have with your physiology. You stop fighting your body and start working with its natural constraints.
So before we wrap this deep dive up, we want to leave you, the listener, with one direct practical thing to notice this week in your real life.
Yeah.
The morning after you have just 1 or 2 drinks, I want you to pay very close attention to your body. Compare your hunger cues and your specific food cravings to how you normally feel on a crisp, non-drinking morning.
You'll be amazed at the difference.
You will literally be able to feel that 20 to 30% appetite stimulation mechanism at work in real time. You will feel those hormones demanding dense calories.
Yeah.
It's not a moral failing. It is biology happening right in front of you.
It's a profound exercise in self-awareness. Because once you can identify the mechanism happening inside you, you're no longer at its mercy. You can observe the craving without automatically acting on it.
Well said. If you want to dig deeper into the clinical science we covered today, or if you want to read the full original article from the Willpower Lie series that inspired this analysis, you can find all those resources over at sandfist.me.
Highly recommend checking it out.
Yeah, that is also where you can find the book and a really extensive FAQ section covering all these metabolic pathways in detail. Just head to sandfist.me. So the next time you look at your dieting spreadsheet and wonder why the math isn't mathing, just remember, the bank teller isn't bad at math.
They're just busy dealing with an emergency.
Exactly. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.